evening, everyone, and welcome to another installment of the Wrestler Review. I am your host for this show, DM, and my partner in crime, James.
Hello everybody, after a successful pilot episode, we're bringing this back, probably not full-time, but at a more regular slot than normal, so hopefully you'll enjoy this.
Yes, this week we have someone kind of interesting. Last week we did Chris Jericho. This week we are doing, well, the Tasmanian...
Last week?
Well,
2 months ago.
last episode, but you know what I mean. But this week we're doing, believe it or not, kind of a favorite amongst a lot of people, Taz. Little bit of background history from Taz. Peter Sonurcha is his real name. He's a retired American professional wrestler. I think he's only like 42, and he's currently the color commentator in TNA with his original ring name Taz, originally the Tazmaniac, and later shortened simply to Taz. And he's currently signed to Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. Poor bastard. He's known for his tenure in Extreme Championship Wrestling, where he's accomplished 2 World Heavyweight Championships, 2-time World Television Championship, I think he beat Shane Douglas for that, a 3-time World Tag Team Champion, once with Sabu, a 2-time and first ever Fuck the World Heavyweight Championship. That's
I will say this right now. Everyone keeps saying like FTW is for the win. Bullshit. Go back to Taz in 1998. FTW stood for Fuck the World, and you know it.
Or in other words, the Brooklyn World Belt. But either way, FTW Heavyweight Championship, and a fourth ECW Triple Crown winner, which means he won 3 titles in ECW. In WWE, his career as an in-ring performer came to an early halt in 2002 when mounting injuries forced him to retire and become a color commentator, which he continued to do with his contract until about April of 2009. 2 months later, Sonurcha, that's Taz, debuted in Total Nonstop Action Wrestling at their Victory Road pay-per-view under the ring name Taz, and eventually reprised his role as color commentator for TNA broadcasts, replacing Don West and Thank You God.
And I'll just say this right now. You know how DM just said that he was a 2-time FTW heavyweight champion? Do you know who he lost it to? Sabu.
Yeah.
And if you actually watch the Rise and Fall of ECW, he actually just pulled Sabu on top of him and let Sabu pin him.
Yeah. Well, that's a little bit of background history of Taz. Might as well start the show right before we get into all of the nitty-gritty about it. What are our initial thoughts about Taz? I'm going to go to James first because he's a big-time Taz fan.
Oh,
he's one of the few ECW originals that hasn't pissed him off in recent months.
Because here's the thing. Taz knows how to control himself with drink and drugs. I'm not saying he does do drugs or anything, but he knows how to control himself. The thing is with Taz... the way I would say with Taz is much like Vince McMahon thought of Taz when he first brought him in here. Taz is just a sawn-off monster. Here's a guy that's 5'7", 5'8", and he's wrestling like he's 7'4". He's a guy that's 250 pounds, but you would think he's wrestling. You think he thinks he's about 400 pounds. The guy he's like the John Cena of ECW with how freakishly strong he is. When Cena FU'd Big Show and Edge, I believe it was at WrestleMania 25, the crowd just went, oh shit. Here's the thing, if you watch things with Taz can actually properly German suplex Bubba Ray Dudley with no with no hurt or no effort at all. He literally could just throw people all over the place. He was the suplex king. I don't care what anybody says. He is the suplex king because the guy can literally take any move he was in and boom, straight into a suplex or straight into something else or the submission. I love with Taz in his matches, he would always go for the Taz mission or always go for the Tazplex. And that was the whole point of the match. He would always try and make sure he choked you out if he could. And every time he choked you out, he would cinch it in and lock it in until either you tapped out or until you got knocked out. And that's what I love about Taz, because he was literally, like Paul Heyman said, the ultimate fight type of wrestler. He was the guy that would literally kick your ass and enjoy it. He was just a guy that was coming down to the ring looking for a fight.
And just to further prove a point, Taz was actually ranked number 10 out of 500 of the best singles wrestlers from PWI in 1999. Not that we're real fond of PWI, but hell, they decided that Taz was number 10. Behind him was Goldberg, The Undertaker, Keiji Muto, Paige, The Rock, Owen Hart, Masawa, Rob Van Dam, and Steve Austin. Personally, I think Taz should be like number 4 on that list, but I digress. At least PWI recognized him. For me, Taz was just a little guy that could wrestle the shit out of you. This was a guy that not only had suplexes, not only had submission, but he had intensity. His debut match in WWF, he fought Kurt Angle, who was at that time untouchable. He was a wrestling machine, and Taz wrestled him to the ground and made him pass out. What's kind of sad for me is WWE did not utilize Taz very well, if at all. And when I think Taz, a little smile comes to my face. Just the little spurts that he got. I think he was a hardcore champion for a little while. I think he was a tag champion for a little while. Just the little spurts that he had, whether he was a heel or a face, still, the guy is an amazing, amazing wrestler. And if you guys want to see one of his best matches, watch him wrestle Bam Bam Bigelow. That guy should not be suplexed, and Taz did it with ease. That's all I'm saying.
Another great one to look out for is look at I think it's the match with Sabu. When Sabu was actually good, the grudge match at the ECW's first ever match at Barely Legal, those two literally beat the fuck out of each other.
Oh, yes. And it's kind of a shame that Taz's tenure now is in TNA, but we can't really, fault him for that. You got to go where you can go. But now it's time for the nitty-gritty. We're going to break everything down, and we have his entrance, his promo, his mat wrestling skills, his finisher, and his charisma. I'm going to pass the torch over to James here. What do you want to give for his entrance?
I'll do it in 2 lots because he had, in theory, He had 2 entrances. One was ECW entrance, which was very basic. One was the WWE entrance, which was very similar, but had that sort of WWE sort of flavour added to it. His ECW entrance was very basic. It consisted of music and a towel. And when he was obviously his MMA character, he had like the MMA people around him, like sort of mock people. I think he had Bill Alfonso and people like that, almost pretending to be like his trainers and sort of like, people that sort of follow fighters to the ring, like in UFC nowadays. It's that kind of feel. His entrance was very simple, but very effective, because once that music hit, whether it was the Path of Rage, which was the ECW theme he had, or if it was the War Machine or 13, which had that infamous hospital beep, that beep, beep, beep. Like, once you heard that, you knew you knew Taz was going to come out and he was going to kill somebody. With WWE, he had a little bit of pyro added into his entrance. It was just something that basic, but overall, his entrance, while basic, I'll have to probably give a 4 out of 5, because every time that entrance hit, you just had that feeling that somebody was going to get the crap kicked out of him.
I have to agree with James on certain aspects. He had a very basic entrance. He had very basic music, and he had very basic, very basic attitude while coming down to the ring. For me, though, I think I'm going to give him about a 3 out of 5, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I don't think if it was WWE's fault per se, but I think his entrance in ECW was a lot better because he just came down to the ring and just did his thing. Whereas in WWE, they kind of told him to, pander a little bit or have a little bit of swagger, and he didn't have that intensity as he did in ECW, one transferring to WWE. Personally, I preferred when he just had the towel and he just came out to the ring and just gave you that look. He was almost as if WWE couldn't afford Goldberg, they got Taz. And not for nothing, I think I'd still want to keep Taz because I think he'd legitimately kill you. But for me, I give him 3 out of 5 overall. The next little snippet we have here is his promo and mic skills, and this is kind of where we're probably going to argue a bit. I'm going to go first this time, and I'm going to give him actually 4 out of 5. It's not necessarily that Taz was a Ric Flair or a Randy Savage or anything like that on the mic, but he kind of followed the idea of less is more. He said what he had to say, and that was it. He didn't go into a 40-minute schematics or make fun of you or talk about your mother. He just said, I'm going to come down to that ring, I'm going to break your neck, I'm going to win. That was it. Quick, sudden, short. Even in WWE, he had intensity in his promos. And for that, for me, he gets 4 out of 5.
I don't know where you think that there's going to be an argument here, because I agree with you. 4 out of 5. He wasn't perfect. There was something about him. I don't know if it was the way he played his character, but there was something about him that always made you think that even though he said what he thought, like the most famous line Taz has ever said was his match with Sabu, where he just said, Sabu, I'm going to choke you out. See you on the 13th. And I think that was the promo. It was just like 10 seconds and that was it. And it was just him.
This is my domain. This is my world. This is my house. I have to! Sabu! I'm gonna choke you out! See you on the 13th!
It was just him in a wrestling ring with like an orange glow to it, a deep orange glow, and it was dark in there, and he said, Sabu, I'm going to choke you out, see you on the 13th. And that's all that he needed to say, because his character alone, just the way he looks into the camera, the way he just walked down to the ring, the way he it was almost an aura he gave off, like The Undertaker. Whenever he comes down to the ring, there's an aura of, here comes a guy that is looking to beat the hell out of his opponent. That is what Taz was. Taz, in my opinion, was almost like The Undertaker of ECW. He just had that feel of, here is a guy that when he cuts a promo, you shut up and listen. When he wrestles, you shut up and watch. And for me, it's a 4 out of 5. He wasn't perfect, but like DM said, less is more. He just said what he had to say, and his actions in the ring let it do everything for him.
What's one of the lines that fits in my mind every time I think of Taz is his famous line, beat me if you can, but survive if I let you. That's almost like saying I'd rather just lose. Because, yeah, you might win the match, but you might have a broken body in the end. Just, again, intensity, and that's why he gets 4 out of 5. Again, he wasn't a Ric Flair, but less is more, and that's kind of what you need.
And I'll just say this right now, and I'm not trying to, say, you should do this, but back in 1995, he was in a tag match with Eddie Guerrero against Two God Scorpio and Dean Malenko, and they delivered a spike pile driver to him, and this is on the Rise and Fall of ECW, and I know I'm plugging this, but seriously, get the Rise and Fall of ECW. It's one of the best documentaries you'll ever see. And they do a spike pile driver to him, and he couldn't, protect his head, so his head just jacks up, and, it just bolts up and he gets a broken neck. He wrestles the match with a broken neck, and Tommy Dreamer and himself walk to the hospital, and they say, how did you get here? We walk. And they went, you can't have walked with a broken neck. And they went, yeah, he did. And I'm not saying this, obviously this is Taz, but that is kind of the passion that Taz had, that he, even with a broken neck, he'd finish a match and then he would go to the hospital. Whereas now, if this was to happen now, the match would be over and they'd have to do all this safety stuff. He wrestled that match with a broken neck and then went to the hospital. The guy's just I don't know whether he actually believed realistically he was an Ultimate Fight guy, but the guy was just freaking insane.
Yeah, without a doubt. Again, without a doubt. It's kind of a shame that WWE never capitalized on him. The next segment we have here is his mat and wrestling skills. Now, those of you that haven't really seen Taz wrestle, you're really missing out. For me, I'm going to be flat out honest and give him 4 out of 5 for his mat wrestling skills. He was a suplex machine. If him and Misawa ever got into a match, it'd be nothing but suplexes. It would be every fucking suplex you can think of plus more. Taz was the kind of guy that could go up to Kurt Angle, go up to Triple H, go up to anybody and have a 5-star wrestling match. The guy was that good.
I'll say this right now. If any of you have ever seen the YouTube clip, I can't remember the 2 wrestlers. I think it's Nakajima and I want to say Muto. It might be Muto or it might be Misawa. The chop fest where they do about 4 minutes worth of chops just back and forward. It's something about 100 chops hit between each man. I can't remember who was in it. But if you were to have, like, say, Misawa versus Taz, that would what it would be. It would literally just be each guy just suplexing each other. And like I said earlier, Taz is one of the few people that no matter what wrestling hold or move he was in, he would find a way to suplex you. And I'm just going to list some of the suplexes he would do to you. Capture, the capture suplex, the dragon suplex, the German suplex, the half Nelson suplex, the head and arm, which is sometimes from the top rope, overhead belly to belly from sometimes from the top rope, the T-bone, the tiger, and the Tasmission plex, which was his finishing maneuver. The guy was freaking unbelievable when it came to suplexes. He was just insane. The guy could have a match with almost anybody. I don't want to say he was a Shawn Michaels where he could have a 5-star match with anybody, but he was on that level where he could give you a damn good match with anybody. And for me, I'm always interested in a Taz match. I have to give him 5 out of 5. I thought he was absolutely fantastic.
Again, I have to agree with James. He had everything but aerial assaults, which he didn't really need because he had enough goddamn suplexes to, well, he had more suplexes than the Raw roster, let's put it that way. And he was one of those guys that, submission, yeah, he's got it. Grappling, yeah, he's got it. Just straight up tough, you could punch the crap out of him, yeah, that's Taz. I'm serious, check out some of his earlier works. There's only a couple of good matches he had in WWE, but that's because, what they had to do. I'm going to switch this up just slightly. We're going to talk about his charisma. Now, this is kind of tricky because he wasn't flashy. He wasn't arrogant. He wasn't the kind of guy you'd get on a microphone. You wouldn't see him at Be a Star. You wouldn't see him promoting ice cream bars. No, this was the guy that you paid him to wrestle, and that is exactly what he did. For me, I'm going to be brutally honest, and I'm going to give him 4 out of 5 for his charisma. It's not that he pandered to the crowd. It's not that he wasn't that kind of character. He was just an ultimate fight kind of guy, but he had that Goldberg aura where he comes in, he wrestles, he leaves, and the fans are somehow behind it. I think the fact that he not stayed one-dimensional, but kept that intensity, I think that's a whole other aura to him, and that's why he gets 4 out of 5 for me with his charisma. He stayed essentially one-dimensional, but he didn't change. You never saw him anything silly, like he wasn't breaking out of handcuffs or anything. That's at least for me. Even in ECW, he kept the same one-dimensional outlook, but his matches never got boring. You always had to watch a Taz match.
You could say the only time he would change per se is he would used to normally come down to the ring in like a pair of shorts. I mean, this is like whenever he was to do a promo or something, he would used to come down to the ring in like a pair of shorts and like a t-shirt, just a standard, like almost like an MMA t-shirt. The only thing he changed was when he started to come down to the ring in suits. And I'm not talking like full 3-piece suits. It was just like a smart pair of trousers and an orange shirt, like an orange dress shirt. And that was it. That was the only real change you got out of him. And you would think with Taz, a guy that is supposed to be just a big, tough guy, it wouldn't work. But it does, because if you actually look at UFC fighters now, they actually dress quite smartly, like whenever they're doing like interviews and stuff like that. They're very smart. It's a casual smart, but with Taz, it was like a very smart, like he was proud to be who he was, and he was happy to just sort of show off the guy he was. The charisma, for me, it's a tough one because, being brutally honest, he didn't have, like DM said, a mass appeal charisma. ECW, where he was best homed in, ECW was a male demographic of 18 to 34, so he was only hitting one echelon of age limits. WWF and WWE are obviously hitting age limits all out of the park. Older, younger, big, small, fat, white, black, green, blue, yellow, whatever it is. They were hitting everybody. ECW was a very, very one-dimensional echelon. But, like Paul Heyman says, and I know I keep referencing to the rise and fall of ECW, but like I said, you've got to see it because it's fantastic. Like they said, yeah, ECW was not the best when it came to lighting and it came to, big expensive stages and all this as well. Screw the lighting, screw the pyro, screw all of that. Accentuate everything that you can do. Best interviews, wildest action, best brawling, and that's the key there, best interviews. Every single time you saw Taz, you listened. Every time you saw Taz walk down to the ring, you were in awe. Every time you saw him wrestle, you were in awe because here comes a guy that could literally kill you and you'd accept it. And for me, 4 out of 5.
Yeah, without a doubt there. You really can't argue with it. You can try, but Taz will put you in the Taz mission.
I'll just say this right now. Can you tell I'm a Taz fan?
Yeah. And now this is where it gets really interesting, and we talk about his finisher. Now, Taz essentially had 2 finishers, so it kind of bumps him up a little bit. He had the Taz mission, which is essentially a rear naked, I believe it's a rear naked choke with a scissor, and the Tazplex, which if you ever get into a Tazplex, you're fucking dead.
It's a choke. It's basically, imagine, you know how Chris Masters is the full Nelson? Imagine a half Nelson, but you're being choked, and whilst you're being choked, you get suplex on your head.
Yeah, you're essentially dead, to be brutally honest. It's actually a really sick suplex. For me, combining both of his finishers together, I'll give him 4 out of 5. It's not necessarily a death move, but it's the fact that the Taz mission comes out of nowhere, and I think that's out of both of them, that's the more deadly of the 2 moves, is that Taz mission, because once you're in it, you're screwed, and unless you're Brock Lesnar or Big Show, there's no way you're powering out of this thing. You need to have like Benoit or Malenko reflexes. As for the Tazplex, yeah, again, I'll still give it 4 out of 5. It's still a quick, sharp, deadly move that I think compares to a tombstone or something. It lands you on your neck and it could knock you the hell out.
For me, I'm going to have to give his finishers 5 out of 5, simply for the fact is I cannot think of anybody ever breaking out of a Taz mission. Ever. Like when they done the Chris Masters Master Lock, I think it was something like 3 or 4 years before someone broke out of it. I cannot remember anybody ever breaking out of a Taz mission because, like Tim said, once he locks you in, you were done. There was no escape. You could try all you want. There was no escape. No one ever broke out of a Tazplex. And I know people are probably going to find a video and going, oh yeah, but someone put their feet on the rope. I'm talking about someone who legitimately powered out of a Taz mission. I don't think anybody has ever done it. As for the Tazplex, yeah, it's one of the sickest suplexes you will ever see. You think you've seen stuff like Brainbusters? You think that's bad? You haven't seen a Tazplex. A Tazplex is a choke suplex. You're literally choking. You're literally being choked out and then being dropped on the top of your head. Just fathom that. It's absolutely sick. For me, 5 out of 5 because any of his finishing maneuvers could be hit out of nowhere, and it's just the impact of, right, okay, they're either going to be choked out or they're going to be choked out and then be dropped on their head. It was just ridiculously how brutal some of his finishes would be. For me, 5 out of 5. His finishes are fantastic.
Without a doubt. Excuse me there. Yeah, Taz is just one of those guys that he gets high marks from both sides of the board, and you can argue or stress the fact that, well, he's never a world champion or he never amounted to much, but he wasn't one of those guys that you never really saw as a world champion, and if he was, you'd never fucking beat him. To me, he's just one of those guys that was just a tough as nails competitor. He was essentially Arn Anderson with a lot more suplexes, which is kind of scary to be honest. Now we get to the closing segments here. We have two little categories: his memorable feuds and favorite match. For me, when I think Taz, I only think of a couple of, and I do mean a couple of memorable feuds. The main one is Bam Bam Bigelow. He had a little one with Kurt Angle, his big one with Sabu, and a small little stint with Shane Douglas, which is where I believe he won the television title. Unless there's any other memorable feuds that you could think of that actually went anywhere.
There was I would say actually the Shane Douglas one wasn't a small one. It was actually quite a big one because it started off with the TV title, and then once he got the FTW title and became absolutely huge, there was, big aura going around of would Taz and Shane Douglas ever fight, and I don't think they ever did. And that was the whole point. The whole point was he was pissed off that Taz and Douglas never fought. Actually, no, sorry, they did fight, because when Taz won the title in 1999, that's who he defeated. He defeated Shane Douglas. RVD was a good one as well. His last match with ECW was with RVD. He had a good feud with RVD. I think Bam Bam Bigelow and probably Sabu, probably the two biggest ones that he would have had. Besides that, I can't think of anybody who was in a legitimate feud. Taz was one of those Taz was almost like a Chris Benoit kind of person, where he didn't need to be in a feud. He could just have a fight with a different person each week and you would accept it. And that's what I think was what enticed me about Taz. He was never locked down in a feud with somebody. He could just have free roam of the roster, and you kind of accepted it.
You didn't have much of a choice, to be honest. He wasn't like a Triple H or a John Cena, where he had memorable feuds that go out in the annals of time. He was just a guy that wrestled, and if you remember the 3-match series they had, okay, awesome. Now this is the tough part, because we get to the favorite match, and it's not that Taz had a lengthy career, but he did have a lot of matches. Now, we've seen a lot of Taz matches, and I'm really pissed off that we never got to see Samoa Joe versus Taz. I'm really pissed that we never are going to see that. And I'm also pissed that we're never going to see Taz versus Vader. I think that would be fucking fantastic.
Taz on Anderson.
Or Taz on Anderson. I think that would be fantastic.
I think the big one that I think loads of people wanted to see and will never see, Taz versus Goldberg.
Yes, that would actually be fucking amazing, because if they both let both of them wrestle, that would probably be match of the year. But for my favorite match for Taz, I'm going to have to give it to Bam Bam Bigelow. Those two fucking destroyed the ring. That is how intense these two went. And it wasn't a prop, like, oh, we meant it to happen. No, they destroyed the ring, and Taz beat them. This is a guy that no one could touch Taz. And Bam Bam, obviously, Bam Bam is the guy to do it. And they had a rematch. And that's what's sick. And the rematch was even better than their first encounter. So my favorite match with Taz is Bam Bam Bigelow, and in second place, Kurt Angle.
You see, this is a tough one for me, because there's like two sort of ways you could look at it. You could look at my personal favorite match, or then like his best match in terms of what you would think would be his best match for somebody to go out and see him. My personal favorite match, I would say, is like DM. I think it's probably the Bam Bam Bigelow match. I'm not sure which one, because they were both really good matches. I'm not sure whether the ring break one or the return match, they were very good. But in terms of, I think, the best match he was in, that's a tough one, because, he had a really good match out of Bubba Ray Dudley in 98, I believe, which was in a tables match, and that was actually quite a really good match. The match with Sabu, obviously, Fairly Legal was good, because that was about 5 years build to that match. Well, sorry, not about, it was about 5 years build, so that was a really good match. But I would have to say probably the best match, if you want to look out for a really good Taz match, look out for the Shane Douglas match, to which he won the world title with in 1999, or look at, I would say, I think do you know what? No, I would have to go with the Bigelow match, but the Bigelow match where they get dropped through the ring, like DM said, it wasn't a fake ring. The power and the weight of both men literally busted the ring badly. And I'll just say this right now. when Taz lost the world title, which I believe was Anarchy Rules in 1999, he was the first person eliminated. And if you can find a video or you're able to watch that match, listen to the reaction of Joey Styles. And I believe, I can't remember who it was with him next. I think it might have been Joel Gertner. But listen to the reaction of Joey Styles when Taz gets eliminated. No one believed Taz could be eliminated so quickly. And when he did, the whole crowd literally just went silent as if to say, whoa. Like, the guy had literally just got beaten. It was that. When a guy gets beaten and the crowd goes silent, you know you're capturing something brilliant.
Without a doubt. Taz, one of those guys that I personally don't think he ever got his due. He's got such a loyal fan following, not just from ECW and from WWE, but he's just one of those guys, those hidden gems of wrestling, I like to call it, that you saw so much potential in him. And he did as much as he could in one company, and when he went to the big time, again, they never really capitalized on it, and that's quite sad, although I think his career was cut short due to, I think it was his neck, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe he had but after he broke his neck in 1995, he never fully recovered. Like, he had the surgery and he was out for like a year and all that as well, but he never fully recovered, and then he just had mounted injuries as well that caused him to retire. But it was the neck injury that sort of forced him into retirement early, which is a shame. But I'm one of those people, like, I'm happy that he retired as he did, knowing that he could not do no more rather than trying to wrestle through a broken or wrestle through a reconstructed neck and it getting worse. Because, I mean, if you look at Kurt Angle, granted he's not, doing too bad for himself, but he had a broken neck and he's had like 2 or 3 different operations on his neck, and he's just not wrestling as he was. And I really think Kurt Angle should be on a lighter schedule, but that's for a different time. But Taz, it's a shame he couldn't wrestle anymore, but I'm just happy that he left when he could, and he left on top of his game.
And without a doubt, Taz is one of those guys that, should he be in the Hall of Fame? You know what? Yeah, I think he's kind of earned his wing. He's in, I guess he's in a good place in his career right now. He left when he was on top of the world, I guess you could say. And it's just kind of a shame that he didn't get the push that he deserved in WWE, but at least for me and for James, at least he gets his spotlight today. And Taz, a hell of a career, a hell of a run. We all wish he could have did more. But for us, at least you're in our good graces, and you're one of the few ECW originals that hasn't pissed us off yet.
Yep. And I don't think he will, because I think Taz is very... We all thought Tommy Dreamer was very respectful to ECW. I think Taz is probably the most respectful for ECW, because I can't think of any single time where you've heard a bad word against Taz, ever.
I don't really think so. And for that, that's this episode of the Wrestle Review, Episode 2 with Taz. Send in your emails and requests for other guys you might want us to do. And it doesn't have to be a mainstream guy. It could be an independent guy, and that'll be more so on James' department. It could be a guy from Japan. How the hell we're going to do people from Japan, I don't know, but we'll figure it out. Or even Mexico or Europe or anything, but we will do them. Other than that, I am DM, and this is my co-host.
I have been James, and if you're asking me to do independent wrestlers, be reasonable. Yes, I do like independent wrestling, but if you're going to ask me someone who's just joined a promotion called from like Millennium Championship Wrestling, who's only just joined, I'm not going to be able to find tapes of his. So can you kind of be reasonable with people that I could potentially see?
Yeah, they have to at least be in the wrestling career for at least 5 years. It's like we're not going to do one on Zack Ryder. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. It just won't. Other than that, we will see you all next week.